DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans to the Chiefs. The strong get stronger. That's kind of how it's supposed to work. Good afternoon. Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the new Double Shot show that comes your way at 4 p.m. Eastern time every weekday. The Steelers do not have a Hopkins. The Steelers do not have an Ayuk. The Steelers do not have an Adams. The Steelers have who they have. And I get it. You can say after a nice W, hey, let's just stick with the guys we have. Let's just ride with Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson. Cal had the big 30-yard play late, and Jefferson had his first touchdown of the season, and everything is just now magical because Russell Wilson is at quarterback. No. Get on the phone with the Rams and get Cooper Kupp. I don't see any of this as being all that complicated or layered. And let me explain why. This is a philosophy that I've had for many, many, many years. It's not about winning the trade. It's about winning the games. And from there, about winning the championship. When your franchise gets to a certain stage of its evolution, I think we can all agree that this franchise, at this stage of its evolution, needs to do what? Yeah, win a playoff game. But you know what? Once you win a playoff game, you're formally, no matter who you are, no matter who you've beaten, no matter how you got there, a contender. You're a contender all the way. That's where this team is right now. When you're 5-2, when you're sitting at the top of your division, when you're 4-1 inside the conference, when you've got the Giants coming up on Monday, no offense, not taking them lightly. I'm not the one who has to play them. They're the ones who have to worry about taking them lightly. They're set up to go 6-2 into the bye week. That's a good football team. That's a contender. If you want to worry about winning the trade, look, the Rams, according to every account out of Los Angeles right now, want a second-round pick, and they're still willing to pick up some of Kupp's significant salary. Okay, great. Okay, pay it. You have it. Pay it. It's not as if there are a ton of other options out there. This is not to be discussed, as I see it anyway, the way you talk about free agency. If you don't get him, that's not a great price. We're just going to move on to the next guy. The wide receivers are starting to move wherever it is that they're going to move. Kupp, he's a slot guy. He can also do some other things, but he's perfect for this offense. I know he's 31. I know he's been banged up. He's missed some games. Dude played 2 games, the first 2 games this season for LA, and had 18 catches for 147 yards. Listen to me. There's no one on this roster, including George, who can pull that off. Not George Pickens either. That's a weapon. That's a weapon that you want. That's a weapon I would argue that you need if you're to be taken seriously as an offense and as a football team. You want to worry about winning or losing the trade, a second rounder? What if we just gave them a third rounder instead? What are you doing? What are you doing? I'm going to roll this one out. I do this a lot. And it's a hockey example, but you're going to have to ride with me on it if all you focus on is football. Many years ago, Craig Patrick, the Penguins Hall of Fame general manager, had to make a decision but after the franchise's first championship in 1991. What's the way that I'm going to get what it is that this team needs? And he talked with, of all teams, the Penguins' arch rival, the Flyers. And he knew that they were going to ask for Mark Recchi, who was young, who was going to be, in Craig's own words since then, I knew he was going to be a Hall of Famer. I knew it. So he sends to the Flyers Recchi. He gets back Rick Tocchet, Shel Samuelson, and Ken Reggett. 3 guys who contributed massively to winning a back-to-back championship. Guess what? Recchi, of course, went to the Hall of Fame. Flyers never got another cup. The Penguins got theirs. It's not about winning the trade. It's about winning the games. It's about winning the championship. At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects. Joined now by Chris Halleck over on the south side, coming out of Steelers headquarters after their practice and access period today. Chris, when we're talking about players who create a little bit of a discussion, a back and forth among the fan base, probably at the top of the list right now is Patrick Queen. Do you get a different sense? Is there somebody else that you'd put in that category, or is Queen the guy?
No, it definitely seems like he generates a lot of discussion, especially if we're talking about more negative discussion. It definitely seems like he's on the tail end of a lot of it. Getting a lot of positive vibes about Deshaun Elliott, which is good. But yeah,
we love Elliott. We love him.
But yeah, when it comes to Patrick Queen, I don't know if it's just because of the contract, and that's probably a big part of it because it was a pretty decent sized contract that they gave him, and so you think big contract, you need splash, you need production, and I also know that there's an adjustment period, and I think that a lot of the comments might be a little bit unfair right now.
Every snap, he's out there. Mm-hmm. Every snap, he's the green dot guy. Every snap, he's more responsible than anyone else on that side of the football for making sure that things are set. You start there with his responsibility. That, Chris, is a really big responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is the quarterback of that defense. It's his job to communicate everything to each player, make sure each player is in the right position. That takes time to adjust. The Ravens don't play defense the same way the Steelers do. They do some things different than the Steelers, and it takes time for him to learn the scheme, the players, what each guy likes to do, what each guy doesn't like to do, what are their strengths, what are the way how does this guy attack this gap, how does this guy maintain his job, just so many different variables and everything. Like, it's just so much stuff. Like I get mental overload thinking about it. Right. And so imagine him, who's actually the one who's got to be out there. Oh yeah, and by the way, you got to be out there and actually make plays too.
And you got to do that. And if you ask me, the best way to find out how Queen is doing is to ask Queen, because one thing you are not going to get from him is some sort of BS positive spin. And just as an example, like the other day, this was after the other night, I should say, after the Jets game, I went up to him and Chris, even before I had a chance to ask a question, he said, "Do you see my two missed tackles early on?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but PQ," and he cuts me off and he keeps going. Okay, those are plays I got to make. Now I made all kinds of plays after that and everything, but those can't happen. It's like, PQ, man, I'm not your coach. I'm not your shrink. It's okay. You're gonna bounce back. You're gonna be all right. But he's also aware that he's doing well. And even then, today, walk me through this. He gets asked what?
He gets asked about the turnover margin, which is +9, which is second best in the NFL right now. So, hey, it's all right to, brush that dirt off your shoulder, brag about it, whatever. He doesn't do that.
Nope. Instead, he does this.
Hunting the ball. They preach hunt the ball. And I think we just all been rallying to the ball, trying to get to the ball and just, create havoc. And, that's what I was just saying. Like, there's just so many more plays out there that we can create. And that we let up, and we know that, and that's why we're so aggravated walking around here right now, just knowing that we can get better. So it's what we do, it's what they preach, and I think it can only get better.
All right, now if you're watching that and you say, okay, great, so he's good at fessing up, okay, when is he going to become a better football player? When is it that he's going to rise up and whatever else? Here's what I have to say about, first of all, Pittsburgh fans and their reaction to inside linebackers. Modern inside linebackers. It's not healthy.
No.
Lawrence Timmons is no more. Hardy Nickerson is no more. These players are gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. Vince Williams, who was one of those guys, he used to talk about it before it happened. He said, we're getting phased out. We're dinosaurs. The old days of a defense funneling the tackles toward a specific guy and that person finishing with 110, 120, even more tackles, those are gone. Inside linebackers, Chris, what do they do in the National Football League in 2024?
They have to run a lot. They have to run so much. They are pretty much just really, really big safeties now. That's pretty much what they have, because they're responsible. I mean, this is what the NFL has done. The NFL has tried so much to widen out defenses, and so defenses have been forced to adjust. Now, we are starting to see the NFL kind of start to swing back. It's not all the way there yet. You're starting to see more and more teams run the football a little bit more often and try to go at defenses a little bit more vertically than they have, but it wasn't that long ago that Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and by the way, Arthur Smith, were leading the charge about wide zone and outside zone and get everything on the edges and stretch out the defenses horizontally. And so that's what linebackers are doing now. And Patrick Queen, like, you look at everything that he's doing, man, like, just in terms of his play, like, yes, has he missed tackles? Yeah. He needs to get better at wrapping guys up and bringing them to the ground. But everything else that he's doing, I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing a bad football player right now. No. And there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me, and that's fine. We don't have to agree on everything. That's the beauty of America, right? But at the same time, like, the dude is out there making plays, and he is still in the adjustment period. We're 7 games into his first season with the Steelers. There is an adjustment period here. Oh, and by the way, do you want to go back to Devin Bush? You want to go back You want to go back to the linebacker play they've had over the past couple of seasons?
I wouldn't drop all the way to Devin Bush. I think that what has to be understood here is that these positions now are coverage positions. The Steelers are more than satisfied internally. I can tell you this unequivocally with Queen's pass coverage. They feel he's done a really good job there. And if that doesn't mean anything to you because you haven't seen, I don't know, interceptions or PDs or whatever passes defensed, then hearken back to how sick it used to make you in your stomach when the Steelers would get just blown away by the other team's tight end game after game after game after game. Well, that's why the defense has changed, because the tight ends became more fashionable and nobody had an answer for Rob Gronkowski. Nobody still has an answer for Travis Kelce. If you're looking at building a defense, this was what you needed. This is why the Steelers were so far ahead of their time with Ryan Shazier. I mean, Shazier was the first of his kind, really, in the NFL. And what was he? They would look at him and they would say, well, it's a safety. Just like Chris just said, they're safeties playing linebacker, but they are. And when you say that you love Deshaun Elliott, and you should, why is that? Because you see Deshaun up there making plays. The safeties and the inside linebacker positions have become, they're almost blurred, aren't they?
Yeah, especially when you talk about box safeties and strong safeties, or any safety that plays close to the box or even in the box. And that is a lot of what Deshaun Elliott has done for the Steelers. He has played a lot in that position. That's why at times, especially when they roll 3 safeties out there, he's pretty much the third linebacker. And you can then afford to have Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts out there if you want to, and get a little big, because Deshaun Elliott can both cover a guy and, by the way, he can also make tackles, because he's done a lot of that too. But I don't get the Patrick Queen discourse. I really don't. I think he's gotten better. He played really well against the Raiders. Granted, Raiders are bad.
I think that when you're looking at these situations, Chris, I think what happens, especially if you're watching the game on TV as opposed to in the stadium, there's a certain play that just kind of sticks in your mind. Oh, yeah, he missed a tackle there. Okay, that guy stinks. And then it's really hard for that guy to shed the label over the course of the game by having efficient coverage, because that's not very sexy, and the camera's not following you around. You know what I'm saying?
It's kind of the same thing with Minka Fitzpatrick right now. Why do you think teams aren't dissecting the Steelers defense deep down the middle of the field because Minka's there. Teams don't want to try to throw it there.
He just has to exist to be effective. It's one of those strange things. It was a lot like the help me out, the guy from Pitt Islands, Darrelle Revis.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Darrell, all he had to do was show up for warm-ups, and he was an effective defensive player. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's the same thing with Minka. And again, having that guy in Queen, to your point on the coverage aspect of it, watch back games and just watching him run with guys down the middle of the field. The Steelers didn't have that before, and you're right. That's not stuff that'll show up on a box score or on a stat sheet. I think he's been a really good addition to the defense so far. Would you like to see more splash? Yeah, sure, of course you would. But in terms of actually the guy doing his job, he's doing his job.
Yeah, let him form a foundation. Leave PQ alone. Both Chris and I say when we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Today's J1Q comes from the Ozarks.
Hey DK, Richard from Southwest Missouri calling in. Wanted to ask a question about TJ Watt. He's currently the Defensive Player of the Year leader per Vegas at plus 100 to win. But the eye test, he's not quite popping as much as last year. He's only on pace for 12 sacks, and granted, he has a lot of forced fumbles. I'm curious as to what you've observed and what you think about his chances.
Well, the thing that I've observed more than anything else is that there's certain opponents, 2 of them so far out of the Steelers' first 7, that have just decided they're not going to let him be the factor, or in the Jets' case, a factor. Indianapolis did a lot of chipping on TJ. They also did a lot of holding. The Jets, they went all out. They went nutso. They had as many as 3 guys over there. I saw this at times live, verified it on film. I still can't believe it to an extent that you would take 3 of your guys and commit them to stopping 1. That's wild. But when you see that TJ continues to compete in that setting, that opens up, obviously, more possibilities for Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, who, by the way, I thought had a really nice game against New York. It's not perfect. You still would rather have TJ embracing all of those opportunities because he's the one who can get back there and knock the ball loose and all that other magical TJ stuff. But it's not nothing. In fact, there are probably some defensive coordinators who would take it because they love numbers mismatches. They love having other guys available to go one-on-one, or in some cases, one-on-none. Now, is TJ losing some of his splash or whatever? I don't know. I guess that would go into how you weigh, for example, like the big-headed version of Barry Bonds, okay? When all that stuff was going on and teams didn't want to pitch to him, they would just walk him. They would just say, hey, there's first base. We recognize that you're performing at an unnatural level, and boy, do I mean that literally. And they would just give him 90 feet. They would even do it at times with the bases loaded. Didn't care. They're not going to let that guy beat them. We've seen that over the years with Bill Belichick. We've seen that with John Harbaugh. Remember the game in Baltimore where Harbaugh would say again and again and again, I'm not going to let Le'Veon Bell beat me, or I'm not going to let Antonio Brown beat me. And you would see the way he would gang up on them, the way the Ravens would just engulf them. Well, you got to beat them some other way in that case. There's not too much that you can do. There is something you can do. I'd like to think, maybe I'm wrong about this, but that the Steelers could do a lot of what, or some of what, the Raiders do with Max Crosby, where you just have him lining up in different spots. The Rams used to do it with Aaron Donald. Just have him, come from the right side or go and stunt over to the middle. That in turn can force the opponent to now not just move one guy, but to move 2 guys, 3 guys out of the way. So you can use it to your advantage. Does it help you to win DPOY? I would have to assume that the answer is no. Does it help you to win games and help you to win in the playoffs? Well, let's just put it this way. TJ's not going to be the one to complain about this because TJ's never won a playoff game. That's what he wants.